and welcome to Telly Talk. I'm Liv.
And I'm Ben.
And on this episode, you'll hear our carefully considered and not at all random thoughts on a show we like. There will be spoilers.
We're giving ourselves an age rating of 15 and above, but you're welcome to make up your own mind. Listener discretion is advised.
And I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone that has rated, reviewed and subscribed. It's so exciting and it really means a lot to us. Thank you very much. And if you haven't done so already, please do it, please.
And you can reach out to us on our socials. We're at TellyTalkPod on Blue Sky and Facebook. And you can email us at tellytalkpod@outlook.com.
So this episode we are reacting to Death in Paradise, Season 14, Episode 5.
5!
I know.
Where has the time gone?
I know, we're over halfway through now.
I feel like it's going quick because they're kind of reusing some of the same plot points over a bunch of episodes. So it's like one episode spread thinly over 4 episodes so far.
Yeah, it feels like they're running out of stuff. They're reusing it, and consequently, it feels like the whole series is dragging on.
This could easily, in my head, mould into sort of one long Christmas special.
Yes, that's what it is, isn't it? It feels like one episode, and actually, we're over halfway through. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we are. Wow. Crazy.
So, do you have a description for us?
I do. Let me describe the episode. It is as follows. Mervin begrudgingly agrees to watch a local women's football game with the team, but it's cut short when the star player is discovered with a fatal bullet wound.
Mervin begrudgingly agrees to watch this match, does he?
He seemed well up for it.
Yeah, he did.
I didn't get that. I was like, no, he seems pretty keen. He's even being ribbed for, like, the day of the match program.
That's it. I quite liked it because it was something he was really into. They've been playing up his dislike of the island, but actually, when this episode opens, we see a joyous side to him.
That's kind of a theme of the episode, almost a subplot of he is warming to the island a bit, and we see that throughout his interactions with Naomi, so that felt a bit wrong in the description, so I would give it 0 review marks out of 7.
Well, the episode description gets
Yes,
0 out
I'm
of
rating
7.
that now.
Okay, well, that's going to be fun.
But, as it said in the description, we've got a murder on our hands, allegedly.
Yeah.
So we probably ought to tell all the lovely listeners what did happen in the murdering.
So the premise of this episode is a football match gone wrong, I suppose.
I suppose.
The team go to watch a women's game, which I quite liked. It's Saint Marie versus St. Augustine. The St. Augustine's goalkeeper is being looked at by the scouts for an American university.
Yes, it's like the university college system of scouting her, and real scouts don't look like that.
Yeah, very prim and proper. They had these very crisp white blazers on.
Yes, matching outfits.
To be honest, I don't remember their faces at all, but I remember what they were wearing.
Yes, and it was pristine.
Yeah, yeah.
We are different and we are American.
So they are at the match to watch the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper seems argumentative and aggressive with her coach. She doesn't listen to the instructions that he gives her. She tries to even get out of the match.
Yes.
But she does play, and then she almost immediately gets sent off.
10 minutes in.
Yeah, she picks a fight, really, with the striker on the opposite side.
The opposition striker seems to pick a fight with her,
Okay.
and then she reacts.
She does, but you would think if you know that someone's here to watch you, that even if you were very riled up, that you wouldn't react to that.
Yeah, that's true. It did seem like there was a pause, and then she went, yeah, I'm going to have this, and then shoved her in the back. And honestly, that was never a sending off. That was 2 yellows at best between the two of them, because she got shoulder barged beforehand.
Yeah, I can't comment on this. I have no idea.
But when she gets sent off, all those scouts huff off, don't they? Like, oh!
Yeah, they want nothing to do with her aggression.
I am outraged that this sporting event has become angry.
Yeah. Well, the striker gets sent off. She disappears. She goes into the changing room, we learn later. And then at half-time, when the rest of her team go into the changing room, they find her dead on the floor, bleeding from what looks like a bullet wound in her thigh.
Shot through the thigh, and you're to blame. You give football a bad name. Did you enjoy that?
Wasn't expecting it.
This is what happens when you give me a mic.
Okay. Well, okay. That's fine. I'm completely thrown off.
But yeah, so the implication is that in the 35 minutes since she was sent off, something has happened that's resulted in her being shot through the thigh. What we want to know is, who's to blame? Sorry, I had to set it up again.
I actually think this is quite helpful because that is exactly what's happened. Well done, good job.
Yeah, and the central conundrum is, how did anyone get into this essentially tiny box room with no entrances apart from the door?
Yeah, and the police were there for the match, and they
Ooh.
didn't see anyone going in or out.
Yes, as Commissioner Selwyn constantly points out, my officers were there and no one knows what happened. The press are going to have a field day.
Yes. Well, it's certainly an interesting one. Their preliminary information suggests that no one did go in or out. No witnesses saw people that were doing some filming of that area. They didn't catch anything.
No one heard a gunshot.
No one heard a gunshot.
Although famously noisy at football.
Yeah, well, they said that it could have been disguised by the band, so they sort of narrowed the window down to when the band were playing.
Yeah, when the goal was scored.
That's right.
By the player that she had the incident where she got sent off with.
Yeah, so it's all a bit confusing at this point.
Well, maybe we should clarify things by digging into our corpse. Not literally, that would be creepy and weird.
I would prefer to call her a victim.
Hey, I was factually accurate.
Yes.
Facturate.
Oh.
She is Inez, the star goalkeeper, as you said, for St. Augustine. She's very highly rated on the circuit, and she had the two aforementioned scouts come in to view her with a view to recruiting her to the US college system.
Yeah, and this was going to be worth quite a lot of money to that football team because it was going to turn into a regular thing.
Yes, and so it was particularly curious that she wasn't keen on playing.
Yeah, and we see her having an argument with the coach, as I mentioned before. She says she's got a migraine and doesn't want to play, but he somehow convinces her to play.
Yes, and it's really pointed that they show that she doesn't follow his instructions. Now, I know that you didn't register any of these instructions because they involve the vague mechanics of football.
Yeah, I just switched off for that bit.
His groundbreaking tactics are for the goalkeeper to kick it long, and what she does is throw it short, and she's hobbling around the place, so it looked a bit odd. And so that's football from like the 80s and maybe early 90s. It's pretty basic.
I'm wondering if that's a reflection of what we hear Mervin moaning about Samaria being backwards.
I think you might be being overly generous. I have a feeling that it's actually just that the writers really wanted to shoehorn this thing of she is not doing what he said, and it's her leg that would be doing the thing that he said, and she's not using her leg.
So that's actually a clue.
It is a clue. Now, sort of possibly spoilers, I called what happened with this pretty much at this point, and I'm very smug. It also probably doesn't reflect well on the writing if I got it that quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't agree so quickly.
No, I was saying, yes, you got it right very quickly. But I also got a thing right, not quite this early.
No.
But, yeah, when her body is found and we see the bullet wound, I said a thing that I was right about.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the suspects, because once we've gone through the suspects and their myriad of motives, then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, just before we move on to suspects, one more thing I wanted to mention about the victim is that they have her phone and they find a lot of death threats on it.
Oh, yeah, she's been being threatened up the wazoo.
Yeah, and one of the most recent things was, I can see you, or I'm watching you all the time, something like that. And then there was an image of Innes in her hotel room, and it was clearly taken within close proximity.
Yeah, she was on her balcony, wasn't she? And it was taken from down, looking up at her, leaning out of her balcony or a window or something.
I thought it was through the window, yeah, but essentially this person who's threatening her is in close proximity and is doing a bit of stalking as well as threatening. So that's where they've got to. This murder hasn't come out of nowhere. She's been threatened for a while.
Yeah, and they're like, don't play in the match or you'll die.
That's right.
Which seems relevant.
Well, it does, and it kind of explains why she was trying to get out of the match.
Yeah, that would be a good reason.
Yeah. Okay, so our suspects then, they actually this time start off with everyone.
Sort of.
I felt like they started with everyone, and I was like, ooh, good, something different to talk about.
I feel like they never really covered how they ruled out, again, literally everyone in the world, including everyone in the stadium, apart from these 3 people.
Well, it was something to do with that noise of the band, wasn't it? They've got these death threats, so they're looking into who sent those. That becomes a suspect. They also have the altercation on the pitch with the opposition striker, so she becomes a suspect. And she argued with the coach, so he becomes a suspect. So that is how they arrive at these 3.
I guess it still feels ropey as heck.
Yeah, well, they didn't really do any fingerprinting of anyone, did they?
And of course, they are right, annoyingly.
Well, I mean, they pull 3 suspects and only one of them did it.
They pull 3 suspects out of their arse is what they did. So our main suspects, in the order in which they're sort of interrogated, are the coach of the team.
Yeah.
Now, the next person has she wears many hats.
Yeah.
She is the backup goalkeeper to St. Augustine. She's also the coach's daughter, and she's also the victim's best friend.
Yeah.
She's everything to everyone.
Yes, which does make it difficult to talk about her.
For those of you that like football, she's basically a utility player. She can play any position. Liv has glazed over.
Yeah, okay.
The third suspect is the opposition striker, who presumably might have killed her for having an argument with her on the pitch.
Yeah. Now, what I thought about all of these suspects is that they're all actually quite likeable.
I don't know about likeable when it comes to the coach.
What I liked about the coach is when they questioned him, he came across as very honest and very balanced.
Yeah, mostly what we got was that he doesn't think much of his daughter.
I was focused more on... They were pressing him about the money because, in terms of motive, they believed that he was more in this for the money that his first prodigy could bring to the whole team.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get into that with his motives, because we're kind of bleeding into it anyway.
Yeah.
So they sort of talk about it with him, and it turns out that the scouts that were coming to view the victim, they were using her as the first test case for what would eventually become like a farm system. So they would be...
Farm?
That's what they call it in football.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so the
How
idea
demeaning is that?
Yeah, I know, right? It's where they would then turn it into an academy, and players would come through this in a steady stream if she was successful. Mm-hmm. Because apparently they have concerns about the temperament and the ability to cope under pressure of the girls in St. Augustine and Saint Marie.
Yeah. So the police are aware that they argued before the match, and I suppose... They then, it would be revenge? Because if he kills her, they don't get any money anyway.
I wonder if the idea was that he killed her to make it look like she was an exception because she had gang ties or something? I don't know. I think maybe just the idea was that it was rage because of the money.
Yeah, rage because of the money.
Look at the outfits that those scouts were in. They've plenty got hella dollar. Because in this, as with everything, America equals money.
Yes. So the coach has a reputation as a strict coach.
Shocker.
Yeah, but he also does seem largely fair. I don't think we can go with fully fair because of how he treats his own daughter.
Yeah, because they also sort of posit the idea that, well, your daughter is her understudy, so maybe you wanted her to play. His defence is essentially, yeah, but my daughter's shit.
Yeah, that's got to be hard to hear.
I mean, that's a heck of a defence, I guess. But that then moves us on to his daughter / victim's best friend / backup goalkeeper / tea lady / psychotherapist. I don't know, everything. So it quickly becomes apparent through some investigating that she is the death threatener.
Yes. So what happens here is that the team used that photo that was taken to try and find the angle. They then used the hotel's CCTV to find out who was stood there taking that photo. And it brings them to her BFF, which is shocking. How could you do that to your best friend?
Well, yeah, maybe they're frenemies.
Well, it doesn't seem so. It seems like, when they question her, she just wanted a chance to play.
Seems like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in the being a bellend stakes.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because her aim was to scare her best friend into not playing so that she would have a chance. She clearly isn't going to impress her dad because otherwise he would let her play anyway. And also, What are the chances of your best friend giving up the match where the scouts are visiting?
Well, it seemed like it was nearly working. As it turns out, it seems like her friend would have quite happily gone like, yeah, I'll take the day off, you play.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Maybe not this match, but maybe others, yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe. And also, like, football is usually a meritocracy, so if she was that good, she probably would be starting. I just assume that she's crap and that her dad's disappointed in her. I've projected a lot there, haven't I?
You have, yeah.
The third suspect is our opposition striker, and I feel like the motivation there initially feels quite loose.
Yeah. Well, they know that the two of them had an altercation on the pitch, but the police find out that she left the hotel the night before. When they trace the taxi firm, they find out that our victim was going to see the opposition striker.
But Liv, they play on opposite teams. They must hate each other, right?
Well, it turns out they don't. It turns out there's very much love between them.
They be fucking.
Right.
But the victim had gone to her partner's house the night before the match to break up with her, to stone cold dump her, because she knew she was going to the US and she wanted to be free when she went to the US.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it means up until that point, she wasn't quitting because of the death threat. She wasn't taking them seriously, maybe, or she was going to ignore them and play anyway. Because, yeah, you're right, she broke up with her girlfriend so that she could go to the US unencumbered.
Yes. So they seem to be at that point sort of hanging their hat a little bit on it, going, well, it was a crime of passion, you were really angry, you had that fight in the match, now I think we understand why that was. But in the meantime, extra evidence comes to light, doesn't it, Liv?
Yes, we see our young new officer, Seb. He's doing some extra investigating like he has started to do, and he has managed to find the murder weapon at a laundrette, and he suspects that the gun was put in with the match laundry, and he sees it going round and round in the washing machine.
It is getting a bit hackneyed now, where every episode it's like, oh look, Seb's doing some over and above investigating, and Darlene gets frustrated with it, but it's going to pay off. Oh, well done, Seb.
Yeah, well done, Seb.
Yeah, but it's every episode at this point.
Now, the downside of finding the gun in the washing machine is that there are no fingerprints on it, so good job the police didn't waste their time fingerprinting everyone.
It's a good thing it wasn't money, otherwise they'd have been done for money laundering. Can you be done for gun laundering?
I'm going to ignore you now. Just going to skip over that.
It's awkward.
So yes, there's no fingerprints, but there is a serial number. They trace that serial number to a illegal gun seller that they're aware of.
He's just a random wrong'un on the island, isn't he?
Yeah, and they go and catch up with him and check his sales records that he clearly keeps.
He's a meticulous wrong'un.
And it turns out that the opposition striker bought the gun from him.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so they're like, aha, you bought the murder weapon, and now she's dead and she dumped you. Aha, ha, ha. And she's like, but I bought that because she was getting death threats and she was really scared. I gave it to her a week ago. And they're like, ah, damn it.
Yeah, they believed her, didn't they?
They're very credulous in this episode. They do a lot of believing, like with the best friend / backup goalkeeper / whatever. When they talk to her, they're like, well, we're going to do you for threatening behaviour, but don't leave the island. And then they just walk off and they're like, come on, at least make her pinky swear or something. You're just like, she seems trustworthy. She's just been doing the death threats. She's fine. She won't go anywhere.
Yeah, so those are our suspects and their motives. Now, the means, as we've already talked about, was a gunshot wound to the thigh. So we have the opposition striker who bought the gun, but hasn't had possession of it for a week.
So she says.
The victim herself had possession of the gun.
Which then sort of means that literally anyone who entered that room would have then had the means because the means was already there.
Including herself. And they always neglect this.
Yeah, but, I mean, I suppose one would argue that shooting yourself through the thigh is a weird suicide.
Then again, this is what I got right, because when we first saw that bullet wound, I said, that looks accidental.
Yeah. Although it's still, the angle of it is weird because they show the bullet hole like halfway up the wall and the shot through her thigh is of a specific angle. So I was trying to work out the physiology of like what position she'd have to be in. It doesn't feel like it tallies with the ultimate solution anyway, but that's just me.
Well, I agree to an extent. It wasn't halfway up the wall. But yeah, the angles are still a bit off.
Yeah. But that kind of covers it. It means that anyone with the ability to pull a trigger could have the means.
Well, I suppose, yeah, anyone that was alone with her.
Yeah. The opportunity is the part which is the most murky, because the whole episode hangs on, but none of our suspects had the opportunity. They was playing on the pitch at the time.
Yeah, our police officers literally had eyes on all of the suspects.
How convenient.
During this, 35 minutes?
35 minutes,
Yeah.
Liv.
So, yeah, no one had the opportunity, did they, Ben?
Or did they?
What do you mean?
I think this was all a ruse. This was the thing I was very smug about earlier. As soon as I saw her bobbling around the pitch and not kicking the ball long, I was like, right, she's already hurt. Whatever's going to happen to her has already happened to her. I was expecting it to be a poisoning or something, but then I was like, oh, right, yeah, she's not kicking the ball because she's been shot in the leg and she's tried to power through. And we've also found, as part of the pathology report, that she's got double the dose of cocodamol painkillers in her system. And I was like, oh, here we go again. She's drugged herself to get through the pain, just like in half the episodes we've seen this season so far.
Well, first of all, you were concerned that she had the painkillers first and then got shot and didn't notice that she got shot.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would have been... At that point, I would have just thrown my notes down and walked out of our living room in protest. But no, they didn't go that far. Although, why people just have high-strength painkillers lying around? They go, right, I've been shot, I'll just drug myself.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they are playing football, so maybe injuries are more common.
I suppose the only thing you could have thought is maybe it was premeditated, she'd intended to shoot herself for some reason to do with insurance or something, so she'd taken the painkillers ahead of time to numb it. That isn't what happened.
Putting a lot of effort into this non-existent plot.
Yep. I've put more effort in than the writers have, Liv.
Well, there is that. Okay, key evidence. We have the death threats.
The threatening threaty threats.
We have the victim limping during the match and not following the instructions given to her by her coach.
I wouldn't follow them either. He seems shit.
We have the victim being sent off, which was apparently out of character for her.
Not according to the scouts, who had concerns about the entire population of San Marie.
The victim had double the prescribed dose of painkillers in her system.
Because of writing.
And they have the gun that was used to kill the victim.
Oh yeah, the weapon. But no fingerprints because it's been laundered.
Yeah. Okay.
That put a dampener on it, didn't it?
Yeah. So the solution then, now I called this, it was an accident.
Well, they seem very willing to take the co-conspirator's word on this. Because the only other witness to this is Dedzo.
Well, plus the injury. I called it when I saw it. So, I'm a lay person.
You mean that she was shot through the leg, and this one's to blame? So who is to blame, Liv?
Well, isn't that the question? They arrest the goalkeeper's best friend, her BFF.
But what about the coach's daughter?
Same person.
Okay.
And the backup goalkeeper, same person. So they arrest her on manslaughter charges for this. However, it was her girlfriend / opposition striker that bought that weapon. And the victim herself who brought it to the match.
But you have to remember, it was the last person who touched it whose fault it was. It's like the playground game. You touched it last, that's your rubbish.
Yeah.
No take-backsies,
Yeah.
officer. Oh, well, let her go. Obviously, we see the flashbacks to it happening, so we know that she's telling the truth. But the police are just very willing to go, yeah, we'll take your word for what happened.
Naomi especially, I think.
Yeah.
She seems to like these girls.
I feel like you'd have been the same in their position. You'd have been like, yeah, that's fine, poor dear. Give her a light sentence. She didn't mean it. We asked her not to leave. She didn't leave. She must be trustworthy.
I am a bit too trusting. Oops.
Did you like them?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so what we see and what we learn happened was that our victim took the death threat seriously, and she went to tell the coach that she couldn't play. In so doing, bigged up her BFF / backup goalkeeper and say, no, she's brilliant, let her do it, she can do it.
Because Dad of the Year is like, you can't not play, my daughter's shit. And she's like, no, your daughter's really good. And he's like, no, she's shit.
But what happens is his daughter, the backup goalkeeper / BFF, overhears this conversation and realises that her friend actually believes in her, and she regrets then sending the death threats.
Up until then, she felt great about it.
Yes. And
she's not a good person, Liv.
and they're alone in the changing rooms, and she admits to what she's done. She said, I sent you those death threats.
And understandably, our victim is like, what in the actual hell? And he's like, I got a gun because I was so scared. And then according to our, I'm going to say murderer, she, through altruistic things, was like, oh no, I need to get that gun away from her because she's too emotional. She might hurt herself. And a scuffle ensued. And then
or maybe she was trying to get the gun from her because she didn't want it to potentially ruin her big chance.
But she said it was because she seemed too emotional and she needed to get it away from her for her own protection.
All right.
I'm just using her words.
Fine, use the actual evidence.
And then that resulted in our victim being shot through the thigh in the slightly physically impossible angle that I was envisaging.
So the two of them wrap the wound up in bandages.
She then downs the painkillers.
And our other person, BFF murderer.
Yeah, murderer, see? It's easier.
Hides the gun in the laundry.
Yes, she initially hid it in her locker.
That's right.
And then when everyone was distracted by the dead body later, she then stuffed it into the laundry basket.
Yes.
So the plan, and I use plan in the largest of air quotes possible, is that she would just tough out the match, hence why she wasn't kicking and could barely move.
Yeah.
And obviously 10 minutes of that with trying to play football with a gunshot wound, she was like, this isn't working. I'm going to get sent off.
Yeah.
And she did.
And then she removed her bandages to check on the wound and bled out.
It's a rookie move and you hate to see it. This is what happens when you self-medicate.
So that's it. That's how it went down.
What I've learned from an early episode, the zipline episode, and this episode is if you have even the slightest wound, don't exercise.
Yeah.
You will die.
You will die.
Die! It's another thing they've repeated. Because do you remember when they were on the zipline, they were like, the centrifugal forces of the zipline meant he bled out quicker.
Yeah.
And they said on here, the exertion of playing the football match meant she bled out quicker.
Yes. I think they need to come up with something else now.
I think it was the gunshot wound, Liv. I think that might have been why she died. And horrendous, miscalculated decisions. Because even D.I. Mervin was like, and after the match you were going to get her proper medical attention, right? And she was like, sure, yep. Yeah, they
hadn't thought about that at all.
No. My headcanon is that this was a cold-blooded murder and she's lied to them and they've just gone, sure.
I mean, maybe. So, do you want to touch on the subplots
Oh
of
my
this
god,
episode?
there's so many subplots. Let's start off with Naomi's ex is the referee in the match.
Yes.
They used to date.
Actually, what's interesting is that she left him when she moved to Saint Marie to start afresh, and our victim left her girlfriend because she was going to go to America.
Yes, and it's because they didn't communicate. They just assumed.
Yeah.
If you listen to any of our other podcasts on Gavin and Stacey or possibly Married at First Sight Australia, communication in a relationship is key.
Yes.
That's my thought for the day.
Wonderful. Well, I don't really like this man.
I don't imagine that you would.
Well, he invites Naomi out for a drink. They have a talk about their relationship, and she comes around to like, well, maybe we can try again. And then he drops it on her that he's engaged.
So what I'm hearing is you like him less than the coach.
Yeah.
Who constantly undermined his daughter's own self-esteem.
Well, I don't like that aspect about him, but to the audience he came across well.
To you, he came across well. Liv, speaking for everyone except for me.
Whoops.
But yes, he reveals, that he's engaged after asking her out for a drink and getting her hopes up.
So you were saying at this point that maybe this is setting her up as ready for another relationship?
Absolutely. It's showing that she is emotionally prepared for a relationship because she's interested. And when he sort of cuts her off immediately by going, I'm engaged, I probably should have told you. Who does she turn to, Liv? Who does she immediately go to dinner with to be consoled?
Well,
everyone's favourite warm cuddly teddy bear of a man, D.I. Mervin Wilson.
You seem to be obsessed with these two getting together.
I'm not obsessed. I'm observing the tropes of what they're doing. It's as subtle as a 2x4 to the noggin.
Wow.
Mark my words. There's going to be at least more hints of a relationship brewing between the two of them.
Okay. Well, if that's true, I would like it to happen organically and not have you ram it down my throat every week.
Okay. Wow. You've got the wrong writers for that, love.
Okay. And then we also get D.I. Mervin's mum story.
Yes, the most participation in the storyline of any corpse that we've had in Death in Paradise, and considering every episode's a murder, it's quite impressive.
So he is returning back to her favourite restaurant, and a member of staff there says that his mum had been planning to scatter her dad's ashes on the beach that the restaurant's on. And he doesn't pay too much notice to this, but Naomi does. And she says that you need a permit to scatter ashes on Sainte Marie, and his mum got that permit.
I have some questions.
Okay.
So one, she definitely couldn't possibly have ever changed her mind. Although, knowing her son as we do, that does tally.
Yeah, well, she went to the effort of getting a permit. You wouldn't do that if you were undecided.
I love that Sainte Marie, the most chilled out, laid back place in the entire world, is like, nah, you need a permit to scatter some ashes.
And to put a satellite dish up.
Yeah, well, yes, there is that. So, you know.
They set that up last episode.
But yeah, this was what we were expecting. They're setting up, you know, oh no, it turns out her death might have been suspicious after all. Oh, who could have foreseen it?
Yeah, so he does reopen the case, or he says he's going to at his earliest opportunity.
But never mind that, the commissioner might be leaving.
Yeah.
But we don't want him to leave.
Well...
Can I sign the petition?
The thing is, the commissioner has not been fun recently. I don't mind if he goes at this point.
That's true. They have really eased his passing from the show by making him an absolute dick for the last few episodes.
Yeah, I would have been upset at the beginning. Now, off you go, lad.
Okay, well. I'm not ready to go with that.
No?
No. You are so confusing with your hot takes on characters from this show. Man who undermines his daughter, love him. Commissioner Selwyn, who's had a duck named after him, hate him. Fuck off.
Yeah. Well, also, at the end of the episode, we see, when it says next time, the guy who's going to replace him, but I thought his role was just disappearing and there wasn't going to be a commissioner.
Yeah, I suspect that this is going to turn out to be some bloke who works at head office who's going to be given the responsibilities of the commissioner's role without actually having a separate role. So, you know, it's going to be Jeff from headquarters. So, yeah, that was the episode.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to give our thoughts on it. What did you make of it?
Well, it's disappointing that so much content was reused from this season.
That's the playbook at the moment, though, isn't it? Like, every episode's got at least one or two things that are, like, blatantly reused from others.
Yeah, the thing is, I wouldn't mind if they reuse something from the early seasons, but they've literally done it this season.
I mean, it could be that they've always done this, and just like every other episode involved the victim being drugged in some way, and we're just not remembering it, but I feel like I'd remember that.
I feel like doing this and going through it in more detail, we're actively thinking about it rather than being passive viewers.
You suggest we're taking it too seriously?
No, just more seriously.
More seriously. What would you rate it?
Well, I've given it 8 out of 10, and I'm now concerned that I might have been too generous.
That is very generous.
Yeah.
8 out of 10.
Yeah.
The problem with a 10-point rating system is that you end up with these sort of like, I don't know, no man's lands of point scoring. So I use a much more efficient 7-point scoring system, as you know, and I've given it an equally vague 5 new commissioners out of 7.
Right.
But that would probably realistically have been 4 out of 7, a sort of very solidly middle of the road, okay-ish. But I gave it an extra point because I worked it out earlier, and it gets a point for smugness. It didn't get 2 points for smugness because I realised that me realising it so early was a bit of indictment of the writing.
Yeah.
If Ben is working this out within 5 minutes of your episode, you have not written this well.
Yes.
So they've got probably an over-generous 5 new commissioners out of 7.
Okay.
Really, if I wasn't so smug, that probably ought to be a 3 out of 7.
Oh, you're lowering it
The
down.
more I
even
talk,
more.
the lower it's getting.
That's happening to me too. I want to change my score.
If we keep going, it'll be -4 commissioners out of 7, which would feel sort of appropriate.
Let's stop there then.
So on that note, that is all, folks.
If you have the time, we would really appreciate it if you could rate and review our podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Toodles.